Chapter 6, Beneath the Tree. The town hall meeting had been a whirlwind of revelations, fear, and heated debates. Holly's throat was raw from explaining, reassuring, and sometimes arguing with the citizens of Mary Hollow. As night fell and the meeting finally adjourned, she felt drained but restless. The information they had shared had raised more questions than it answered, and the worried faces of her neighbors haunted her thoughts. Jack found her sitting on the steps of the town hall, staring at the great Christmas tree that dominated the square. Its lights, once a beacon of cheer, now seemed to flicker ominously in the growing darkness. "You're thinking about what Juniper said, aren't you?" Jack asked, settling beside her. Holly nodded, her eyes never leaving the tree. "If what she told us is true, if the founders really did trap the essence of winter beneath that tree, we need to know more, Jack. We can't protect Mary Hollow if we don't understand what we're up against." Jack's cool hand found hers, a comforting presence in the chill night air. "I agree. But the tree is always guarded. How do you propose we investigate?" A mischievous glint appeared in Holly's eye, reminiscent of her more carefree days. "Who says the guards need to see us?" Under the cover of darkness, Holly and Jack made their way back to the square. Holly's invisibility spell, usually reserved for hiding Christmas presents, enveloped them in a shimmering field that bent light around them. They moved silently, their footsteps muffled by a cushioning charm. As they approached the great Christmas tree, its immense presence loomed over them. Up close, Holly could see that the needles, usually a vibrant green, had taken on a silvery sheen. Frost patterns, more intricate and wild than Jack's careful designs, crept along the branches. "It's changing," Jack whispered, his voice tinged with awe and concern. "The magic is shifting." They circled the base of the tree, searching for any sign of an entrance. Holly's witch senses tingled, picking up traces of ancient magic that made her skin prickle. Finally, behind a particularly gnarled root, they found it, a faint seam in the earth, pulsing with hidden power. "Here," Holly breathed, kneeling to examine the concealed door. "But how do we open it?" Jack knelt beside her, his icy touch tracing the seam. "It's sealed with winter magic. Old magic. I might be able to." "There." With a soft click, the hidden door swung open, revealing a dark passage that plunged into the earth. The air that wafted out was cold and stale, carrying with it the scent of pine and something older, wilder. Exchanging a determined look, Holly and Jack entered the passage. The door swung shut behind them, plunging them into darkness broken only by the soft glow of Holly's wand and the ambient light that seemed to emanate from Jack's icy form. The tunnel twisted and turned, forming a dizzying maze beneath the streets of Mary Hollow. Roots from the great tree above broke through the walls and ceiling, some as thick as Holly's waist. The further they went, the more the air seemed to pulse with magic, making Holly's hair stand on end. "Jack," Holly whispered, her voice seeming too loud in the confined space, "do you feel that? It's like the magic is alive somehow." Jack nodded, his face serious in the dim light. "It's the wild magic of winter. Contained, but not tamed. Be careful, Holly. This place is ancient and dangerous." As if in response to his words, the tunnel ahead split into 3 separate passages. Each looked identical, disappearing into darkness. "Which way?" Holly asked, her wand illuminating each option in turn. Jack closed his eyes, seeming to concentrate. When he opened them, they glowed with an inner light. "This way," he said, pointing to the rightmost tunnel. "I can feel the pull of winter magic." They pressed on, the tunnel growing colder with each step. Holly's breath came out in visible puffs, and frost began to form on the walls. Just as the cold was becoming unbearable, the passage opened up into a vast chamber. Holly gasped, her wand light revealing a sight beyond her wildest imaginings. The chamber was circular, its domed ceiling lost in shadows high above. At its center stood a pedestal of ice, upon which rested a familiar object, the snow globe that had once been the source of Mary Hollow's eternal Christmas. But it was the walls that truly captured their attention. Every inch was covered in intricate carvings and paintings, depicting scenes from Mary Hollow's history. Holly approached one section, her eyes widening as she took in the images. "Jack, look at this," she called, her voice hushed with awe and growing horror. "It's showing the founding of Mary Hollow. But it's not like any version I've ever heard." The carvings showed a group of figures, the founders, Holly assumed, engaged in what could only be described as a battle. They fought against swirling masses of snow and ice that took on monstrous forms. At the center of the icy maelstrom was a figure of terrible beauty, a being that could only be the Frost King. "They didn't just create a Christmas paradise," Jack said, his voice grim. "They imprisoned winter itself." As they circled the chamber, the story unfolded before them. The founders, using magic unlike anything Holly had seen before, forced the essence of winter into the snow globe. The final image showed the Frost King, his face a mask of rage and anguish, being drawn into the globe as the founders sealed it with their combined power. This is wrong," Holly said, her voice shaking. "They didn't just create eternal Christmas. They stole winter. They upset the balance of nature itself." Jack nodded, his expression troubled. "And now that balance is reasserting itself. The magic is breaking free." They turned their attention to the pedestal at the center of the room. The snow globe pulsed with an inner light, swirling patterns of frost and snow dancing within its glass confines. As they approached, Holly felt a surge of magical energy that made her gasp. "Careful," Jack warned, holding out a hand to stop her. "There are magical traps all around it." Holly nodded, raising her wand to cast a detection spell. The air around the pedestal shimmered, revealing a complex web of magical tripwires. "It's incredible," she breathed. "Layers upon layers of protection spells. How are we going to examine it?" Jack's brow furrowed in concentration. "If I can just... There." He made a sharp gesture with his hand, and a small section of the magical barrier seemed to part like a curtain. "Quickly, it won't last long." Holly darted forward, her hands hovering just above the snow globe's surface. She could feel the power radiating from it, a cold so intense it burned. Within the globe, she caught glimpses of swirling, angry forms, the trapped winter spirits, she realized with a start. "Jack," she called, her voice urgent, "I think I can see." But her words were cut off as her elbow brushed against the pedestal. Instantly, the chamber erupted into chaos. Alarms, magical and mundane, blared to life. The temperature plummeted, ice crystals forming in the air around them. "Holly, run!" Jack shouted, already moving towards the exit. They sprinted through the maze-like tunnels, the sound of pursuit growing behind them. Holly's heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Just as they reached the hidden door, a blast of Arctic wind caught them, nearly freezing them in place. Jack spun, throwing up a wall of ice to block the pursuing magic. "Go," he yelled to Holly. "I'll hold them off." Holly hesitated for a split second, then nodded. She burst through the door, emerging into the night air of Mary Hollow. Seconds later, Jack followed, slamming the door shut behind him. They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of the gingerbread cottage bakery. As they caught their breath, Holly realized she was clutching something, a small, ornate box she must have grabbed from the chamber in their hasty escape. Jack noticed it too, his eyes widening. "What is it?" he asked, moving closer to examine the box. Holly shook her head, still panting. "I don't know. I must have grabbed it without thinking." She turned the box over in her hands, feeling the weight of ancient magic within. "But whatever it is, I have a feeling it's important." As the adrenaline of their escape began to fade, the magnitude of what they had discovered settled over them. They had uncovered the dark secret at the heart of Mary Hollow's founding.